Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Log Talk with Pertnear Outdoors. This is your host, Billy, and this is episode 72. This episode is going to be a sit-down with Steve Sherk. Steve was on with us back in the summer. We had gone down and done a little workshop with him to learn how he approaches the big woods down in Pennsylvania. And if you have not listened to that before you listen to this, I would say go back. Or if you have not listened to anything with Steve, he has a wealth of information. He's done a bunch of podcasts over the last several months with, he was on Trail Cam Radio with the guys from Exodus. He's done a couple episodes with Bo Martonic over at East Meets West Hunting Podcast, as well as Cliff Campbell over at Truth from the Stand. He's done a bunch of good episodes with those guys too, and I'm honored to be able to sit down with Steve and shoot the shit. He's a super nice guy and an open book and very generous with his time and information. So excited to get this conversation out to you. Kind of did a little Q&A, so we got caught up with him on how his season's been, as well as his clients. And then we got into some questions that we got from the listeners of the podcast on stuff that they'd be interested to know from Steve's perspective. So I think we got a pretty good, informative conversation here for you. Hope you take some good stuff away as we look towards rifle season. And that for us here on the Harvey side of things, we are excited about rifle season. We get excited about all things deer seasons, but gun season is a big family tradition. It seems to really bring everybody together. This year is going to be a little bit different as everyone is experiencing their lives being different with what's going on with the virus. And here in New York, we're certainly getting pressed down with some restrictions. So we're all trying to navigate through that, understand how we can do what we can do, and make sure our families and our friends and everybody are feeling comfortable with what we're doing. But we will have deer camp in some facet or another. Might be a little bit thinner than usual, but we're looking forward to it. So next Saturday, so that this you'll be listening to this on Monday the 16th at the earliest. Saturday the 21st is our opener here, and I'm pretty excited about it. I've got what I feel like a pretty solid game plan put together. I'm taking my buddy Jeff Jones and Connor Holly with me. Both are new hunters. This is Jeff's first year. If you've been listening, you know that Jeff is a brand spanking new hunter, and he was one of those 40-something thousand individuals that took the new course and bought licenses this year with everything that's going on. So excited to get out and experience this opening day with Jeff. And so the three of us are going to hit some public land, and I've got a couple ground blinds set up that I built out of some dead sticks. And so Connor will be posted up on one of them, and I've got another spot. I'm going to sit on the ground, or maybe just it's on a real side hill, steep side hill. I might I might try to set up my saddle and kind of just sit a couple feet off the ground so I can have good visibility up on top onto the flat as well as down onto the side hill. So excited about that spot, and Jonesy's going to post up on a big oak flat in the climber so he can have lots of visibility and hopefully see some good action. So excited about the opener of gun, and probably going to do a podcast with those two guys next Friday. We're all off work, and we're going to spend the day getting things ready, getting gear ready, getting guns sighted in. They should be sighted in, but just make sure everybody's comfortable with their weapons, and then we'll be ready to head out Saturday. So next week's podcast will be will most likely be a podcast with Jeff, Connor, and myself talking about the anticipation of opening day. So I'm looking forward to that. So keep your eyes peeled there. As far as Breeding Radio goes, it's been a really fun season. It's been a busy season, so I think we're going to probably start winding that back a little bit. It's been a ton of work. Appreciate my brother and then all the listeners out there that have engaged with us and jumped on and shared their stories. But it's getting to the point where we're about past the rut, or at least the first wave of the rut is kind of calming down a little bit. So the whole theory of breeding them is going to slow, and it'll be turned to feeding them, and we can cover that in our normal weekly episode. So we'll probably still have a few stragglers coming around, but for the most part, we'll just be getting back to one or maybe two episodes a week through the rest of the season. So that's the game plan as far as the podcast goes. And we're just going to keep plugging along and excited for next weekend. Just a couple plugs. I've been neglect to keep remembering to mention, but I did on last week's the last episode of Breeding Radio. If you are in the Western New York area and looking to get a European mount done on your trophy this fall, oh boy, Bill Dan's awake. I recommend checking out John Peterson over at Deadhead. He's got a little side hustle he's got going where he's doing European mounts. So John is one of our guys, and he lives in the Lancaster area. So he has a Facebook page, Deadhead European Mounts. If you check him out on there, or if you just hit us up and let us know you've got a skull you'd like to have a Euro done on, we can contact John for you and get you guys put together. But does a nice job. He can do custom plaques as well. He's got a hookup for that. So good deal, and definitely recommend you checking him out with gun season coming. I'm sure there'll be a lot of opportunity to have to think about that. We got just a couple hats left. I've only got 2 of the orange. Hopefully by the time we get to next Friday, they'll be gone with everybody thinking about needing orange. So I've got 2 of the orange left and about 8 or 9 of the tan relaxed fit hats left. So jump on the website and grab them before they're gone. I still have the free shipping set up on there. So if you order them online, I'll get them shipped out, and you won't have to pay anything, which is cool. And just remember, if you're doing any shopping, whether it be hunting-related shopping or maybe even holiday shopping, make sure to use the link in our bio. We've got a bunch of affiliate links set up with mainly the ones that are getting the most use are Cabela's, Camel Fire, and Black Ovis. So check those out if you do any shopping on those sites. If you click on our link and go through our channel, it'll help give us a little commission, and that's what I'm using to help pay for the monthly expenses of the podcast. So I really appreciate all of that, and for people that are supporting us, it's all good in the hood, man. So I will let this podcast roll, enjoy my conversation with Steve, and good luck this upcoming week. Keep feeding them, people.
Hello.
Yeah, that's your
Yeah.
name.
Squirrel's got me.
Big Jim.
Yeah.
Really, 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 really cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
That's good that you think that of it, because that's what your hunting typically is cold and fun.
Yesterday morning, I'm glassing up on the pass, and I see these deer moving, and I'm like, ooh, there's some deer moving. All of a sudden, I just see this person just head down, just hauling ass, wearing shorts and a t-shirt with a pack on. And I'm like, is that Tard? My dad always talks about floating through the woods like the autumn breeze.
So Robert's
When you're
the ghost, and that's
275
Tard.
pounds, I don't know how you do that, but
The Freightliner. It's just like a creeper. You're just kind of up in the corner watching what's going on down there.
yeah.
You know,
He's like,
he's up there slapping and pissing all over everything.
is it warm yet?
How did you know the name of the actor?
That's I know.
Why did you say his name?
Hervé Villagers.
You know what Pertnear means.
If you know what Pertnear means and you live in America, you're a redneck too.
Welcome to the Log Talk Podcast, brought to you by Pertnear Outdoors. All right, mic's hot. I've been known to do that. Just fire it up. Nobody knows when we're actually talking. So, we are sitting down here at the Sherk Mansion down here in PA. So, Steve Sherk, thanks for having me down. It's good to see you, and good to be sitting down again to actually have a face-to-face discussion. The last podcast we did was a Zoom, so it's a little bit nicer to sit down and be able to look you in the eye physically and not virtually.
Sure, and it makes it a lot easier for me when I can just be here at camp and talking.
No doubt. So I guess the game plan for today is we want to just check in with you, see how things are going down here in the big woods. We had you on the podcast back in May. We talked a little bit. We had come down, Dallas and I, and we did a workshop with you. You took us around and showed us some of your spots, your setups, how you kind of look to hunt some of these bucks that you feel are living in certain areas. We talked trail cam strategies, a lot of like preseason stuff.
Yep.
So I wanted to get you on before season started, but there's just never enough time in the day.
I hear you.
So I'm not upset about that because we're able to get together. It is the middle of season. It is the rut.
Yep.
It is the time to be in the woods, and we're approaching what a lot of us look forward to in rifle season. So
Yep.
I got a bunch of questions that we'll go through to kind of chat about what some of your thoughts are and what people are wondering from you when you're approaching gun season in the big woods, what some of your setups are,
Okay.
Post rut and maybe even into that kind of second rut situation. So that's me yammering about what I want to talk about today. So
Okay.
what's up with you? How have things been? How's the season gone so far?
I think it's been a pretty good season. Just the weather's kind of up and down. It seems like when you have good hunting weather, the hunting's been good. People are seeing more deer, having more action. Then when we get these almost 80-degree days, it seems to slow down. But just kind of like a roller coaster ride this season.
Yeah. Did have you had clients right through most of archery season or?
No, we didn't start till October 22nd. I
Okay.
usually don't start till closer to the rut, and then it gives me more time to prepare and even maybe a little bit of time to hunt early.
Yeah.
No, it started out, like I said, it seemed like it started out okay, and then it has its ups and downs. And like I keep saying, it's just at least these deer in these big woods, and from my experiences, the weather impacts the intensity of the activity more than anything here. So
The daytime activity for sure.
exactly.
And it's how warm has it gotten down here for you guys?
Yesterday, I had 79.
Yeah,
It's like 2 o'clock.
it's about what we had. And it's and even back like the last week of October,
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty hot down here too, like the
Yep.
week of like the 24th, 25th.
Exactly.
I know the guys from the hunting public were down
Yep.
somewhere in PA and it was pretty hot for them.
Yep.
But then there was that kind of cold snap that came through. We had that end
Right.
of October, which was
Really
cold.
good.
We
Yeah.
had some little bit of snow on the ground.
Yep.
Looks like you guys actually got a fair amount of
we
snow.
probably had 4 or 5 inches, and
Yeah.
it was really good those days.
Did you guys any of your hunters have any success on those days out there?
Well, we really only had like 2 days with actual snow on the ground, but I'm trying to think. I don't know if we had any kills those days, but probably the best action those days. And
Yeah.
then the best deer we killed was the day the snow melted. The best deer we've killed this year. So I've said it before, like people. I'm not saying in the wintertime when you have consistent snow, you might not see changes in activity, but when you get all a sudden snowfall here, the deer just go nuts.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we saw.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yep.
it's not often you get that in October like that, especially right around
Yep.
a new moon. Everything kind of lined up.
Yep.
It was definitely that Halloween weekend was a magical weekend to be in the woods for sure.
Absolutely.
So we kind of like jumped ahead to like now currently, but
Yep.
run us through. You shot a nice buck back. What was the date of that?
28th, October 28th.
Okay, so that
Yep.
was right around that Halloween weekend. So,
Yep.
Was that a deer you were aware of? Was it I guess run us through that scenario or what the hunt was for that buck?
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of the deer. Obviously, there was a lot bigger I was trying to hunt this year. And I'm not making excuses, but when you try to guide, because I had clients then, like, you can't target a specific deer when you're guiding. So I try to find, like, spots where maybe I have multiple options of several good bucks in an area and somewhere I can get in and out quick because I might only have, like, a couple hours here, a couple hours there. So that's kind of what I was hunting. Just I knew I was in an area where there's 4 or 5 good deer that that I would be happy to shoot, and he came by. I did some blind grunting. It was a late afternoon hunt, and I had some does off to my right. So he came in, and the wind was blowing from my right shoulder to my left, and he got downwind of me and actually spooked and ran 50 yards. So I didn't do anything. I just figured it was all over. But I had the does, like I said, on the opposite side of me. Well, he ended up just turning around after he spooked and changed his mind despite knowing that there was a human in the area, and walks right under my stand heading right for those does. And I shot him. I blew his spine out, him both the lungs right under me.
No kidding.
So, no, it's pretty crazy.
That's amazing. I mean,
Yep.
when they know and they just don't. They like
He didn't
the
care.
forces of the lady
Yep.
just pull him right back in.
That's the only time of the year that could possibly happen.
Yeah.
And I've actually never had that happen. I mean, usually a buck any time of year gets your scent, he's gone, but not
Yeah.
this guy.
So So you said you blind grunted.
Yep.
Those does weren't visible. They weren't in the area, or you could see.
No,
the does?
I'll as long as like I won't be grunting like crazy if I have deer around me. But actually, if you do it right, like the does, I kind of waited till they got out of sight. Maybe I get a couple glimpses of them, and then I was grunting in the opposite direction. But I think that's actually a perfect time to grunt because as long as you don't think they can see you, they're probably not going to be too worried. I mean, they're getting grunted at all day that time of year anyways.
Right.
So knowing those does are in the area and then me grunting, I think only increases my chances because, you know, if a mature buck is around and he knows there's does in the area, he doesn't want another mature buck to be there. So
Yeah.
I really think that it was just that's kind of what favored my success that night.
Well, for sure. I mean, when you have the live
Yep.
decoy there, what the bucks are interested in, I mean,
Yep.
it's a no-brainer.
Yep.
And there's been, and maybe again, I've said this before, maybe it's because I'm paying more attention to it
Mm-hmm.
and communicating with more people, but almost everybody we've talked to, that's a vague statement. Many people we've talked to, including myself and my brother,
Yep.
the bucks that they've shot, especially in the end of October here, this past October, were grunted in.
Yep.
We're blind, no deer around, or
Yep.
you know, in your situation you had does, but there was no buck visible.
Yep.
You were just laying out some grunts.
Yep.
And my brother shot his buck that way. I shot my buck that way. You shot your buck that way.
Exactly.
And I know there was a few others that we've talked to that it was just, you know, you put yourself in a position. So I know how I was set up. I was set up on, and I give a lot of credit to my aggressiveness of how I approached this hunt. We had come down here in the spring, and we did that walking with you, and you talked us through a lot of the ways that you set up and where you go, especially come the rut to target these bucks.
Yep.
And I took a lot of that stuff back home.
Oh, great.
And it was validating, like I told you when we were here back in May, that a lot of the stuff we talked about, it was like, wasn't so much like revolutionary to me, but it was like validating that the things I was thinking, it was like, yeah, you're on the right track.
Great.
And so I took that and I put a game plan together, knowing where I'd been seeing a lot of does. And this is the one thing you told me last week, or whatever that was. We must have been messaging right around. I think I congratulated you on your buck,
Right.
and then we were messaging back and forth. And you just told me, you're like, know where your does are and what your doe group's doing, and just
Exactly.
pay attention to them.
Yep.
So in my mind, you know, I set up on this spot on the downwind side of a doe bedding area where I know there's a heavy population of does.
Yeah.
And I based my hunt on that and ended up getting right in the middle of it. So doing that was a very effective method for
absolutely.
you with your setup. Were you kind of doing the same thing? Were you focused on doe bedding areas or doe areas where you know they were going to be feeding and living?
That's all I was focused on. I wasn't worried about sign or anything. These does were bedding like real tight to food to an oak point, and I mean I knew there was like 5 or 6 mature doe in the area. I knew in the general area there was 4 or 5 good bucks. Wasn't worried about pictures of bucks or nothing. I just knew that time of year, that's like the number one thing on a buck's mind. And I also like that late October because there's not many does in heat, but the bucks are checking. So all the good bucks in your area, if all is right, and they're going to be cruising, searching. So yeah, I mean, I was kind of in the same boat as you. I was just, the does are like the bait that you can be using that time of year, and I just threw all my money on those does, and it paid off.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I've made in the past is getting obsessed with sign that I've found.
Yep.
And hunting the sign more than hunting where I know the deer are going to be.
Yep.
Or historical data of where I've seen things happen.
Yep.
And that's, if there's anything that, you know, I would recommend to people to think about, and this is something you pointed out to Dallas and I when we were down here.
Yep.
You get infatuated with these huge rubs and with these
Oh, yeah.
scrapes and all this stuff. You get infatuated with it. And you're like, well, I'm going to set up right here.
Yeah.
And how many times, I know that there's guys that are big on hunting that stuff, and it's not a bad strategy.
Yep.
But you might not, that sign's most likely made at night.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
you can get, especially if it's in the open hardwoods. That's one of the things you told us when we were down
Yep.
here.
Yep.
And that was like a validating thought to me because of experiences I've had where I've gotten into hunting these open areas where there's all these buck rubs, and you're like, oh my God, there's a deer that's like in here.
Yep.
And that deer was there at 2 a.m.
Yep.
just going from point A to point B and just making a whole bunch of sign and
Sure.
leaving you in the dust, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, sign's a good thing to find, but not at certain times. It's not always the best thing to set up on. And when I shot my buck, I don't remember a rub or a scrape within sight of me. So, but the thing about that time of year is it's like a transition time where bucks might be leaving some of their core areas to transition to more where does are hanging out, and so I wasn't really expecting to see a ton of sign anyways, because bucks are just starting to move into those areas. You might see a rub or scrape here and there, but just I paid good attention to what the does were doing in the area, and that's how it paid off.
Yeah, it's really fun to start. Like, that's where this game of hunting and trying to have success, especially in the woods environment, the big woods, whether it's just big flat woods or big mountainous areas like this.
Sure.
Like, to be able to start to put some of those pieces together, regardless of the size of the buck. My buck wasn't huge, but to me it was a huge accomplishment.
Sure.
It's my first archery buck on public land, first archery buck on this property.
Sure.
And it was just such a, like, it just felt good to put a plan on paper and see it all come together. Now,
exactly.
I could have been there on a day when there wasn't a hot doe in the area,
Yep.
and I may have not seen a damn thing.
Yep.
But for it all to work out, it's really fun.
Oh yeah.
It's fun to experience that.
And I'll touch on something might be a little off topic, but I think people just got to be careful. Like, everyone wants to shoot a big buck, but you have to shoot the deer that makes you happy. And yeah, maybe it is a greater reward if you shoot a big one, but if 100-incher, makes your season, I don't think there's any reason to pass it up.
No.
And when I had a guy last Friday, never shot a deer ever in his life, and he shot just like like an 80-inch 8-point. I'm probably more happy about that guy shooting that deer this year than the 135-inch 10 that got shot a few days before. I kid you not.
Yeah.
So I would just tell anyone, don't try to like follow what everyone else is doing. If whatever makes you happy and you're going to be happy to put your tag on it, just shoot that. Don't worry about the size.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that we are trying to do a better job of, and we've gotten our chops busted a little bit with Pertnear Outdoors, because we've had some people ragging on us on Facebook in particular about how we're doing podcasts, and we do our weekly Breeding and Radio episodes where we get guys on to tell their stories about their bucks and how it all went down.
Yeah.
And a bunch of the bucks are 2.5-year-olds.
Yeah.
And guys are like, "Whoa, this is, how stupid is this? You're going to get somebody on to tell about how to kill 2.5-year-olds." It's like, dude, if you're that strong-minded of an individual where you have to get on here and bash somebody
That's sad.
for shooting that, like, you have a problem.
Yep.
Like, you probably have a small willy, or you're very self-conscious of something else, because at the end of the day, who cares?
Yep.
We're all out there doing what we are passionate about. If you're following the rules, if you're hunting somebody else's property and they're trying to manage it for something,
sure,
that's another story.
Yep.
But we're all doing it in our own legal ways.
Exactly.
And whatever you feel makes you happy, to 100%. I shot that buck, not the biggest buck I've ever shot.
Yeah.
I shot that buck, and I was so proud of that. And putting it all together, I said it, and I just keep saying it, and it's probably annoying, but I was super proud of it.
Yeah.
But then that was on the 30th, and Halloween is the next day, and I was planning on hunting the whole weekend.
Oh, okay.
So that was causing tension at home. I'm not going to be there for my son's Halloween party and go trick-or-treating with him. I was going to miss all that.
Yep.
Instead, I punch that tag, I spend the night at camp, and then I come home, and I get to spend the holiday with the kids and the wife and all my family.
Exactly.
And it's just like, and now I've got no pressure. So it's like, I am so glad I pulled the trigger on that deer.
Absolutely.
Never questioned it for a second. When I saw that deer come out of the brush and responding to my grunt call, it was like, yep, game on. Like, I'm gonna pull my bow on this buck.
Yep. That's what it's all about.
It is. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and especially a guy that, you do a ton of legwork. You're looking, you're on these giant bucks. But even to your point, your deer is just an average buck you shot.
Yep.
Beautiful, very respectable buck for this type of terrain.
Yeah.
But you're proud of that.
There was way bigger. And I don't mean to make excuse guiding, but if I really don't think I can focus and target like the biggest deer when you're trying to guide, and it's just I have to make sure that a client is my number one priority. And I was even having some guys hunt the buck Crazy 12, and I wasn't even hunting them. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but I just try to make sure that they're my number one priority, and then hopefully I get some time to hunt. And if a pretty good deer comes by, you know, my standards aren't 140 or 150 class, or
Yeah.
you know, so if it's a pretty decent buck, maybe fairly mature, I'm super happy with it.
Yeah.
So,
And you'll get your chances. Everybody will get
Yep.
there. You know, every couple of years you'll get a stud come by and you'll get your one shot.
yep.
And you hope to God that, you know, that's one of the benefits of shooting deer every year is that you gain confidence, you gain experience.
Yeah, that's a good
If
point.
you don't pull that trigger, that was me for the first 12 years of my hunting.
Hmm.
I was like always after the big buck, and I
Yep.
just didn't shoot any deer.
Yeah.
I was hunting, but I wasn't shooting anything.
You get
So
a
then
little
when
rusty.
when I get the opportunity, I was missing a
Yep.
lot because I just didn't have the experience.
Good
So
point.
now it's like the last 3 years I've shot 2 deer each year with my bow, and I'm
Mhm.
gaining confidence. You know, am I a great archer? No, but I'm gaining confidence in those situations, and I think there's a
Yeah.
huge value to that.
Nope, that's a great point. I think people should be listening to that.
Yeah, if you're shooting foam and you're shooting, you know, 10Xs all the time, great. But put a deer in front of you. Put that, like Jimmy's shot and your shot sounded very similar, straight down.
Yep.
That is a really challenging shot.
Oh, it was not easy.
No. And if you don't have confidence or haven't made that shot or attempted that shot, I don't know, I've missed that shot multiple times.
Yep.
And you gotta, I mean, that's an experience thing. You can't simulate that unless you get up on top of your garage and shoot at your deer target straight below you. Like,
Yep.
it's a really hard one.
Yep.
And I actually practiced that shot. This year we all got together and we were doing
Mhm.
a little target shooting, and everybody's working at 30 yards, 25 yards, and
Yeah.
we're like actual simulated shots in the woods up in our stands.
Mhm.
It was fun. But I set up the block like 5 yards from the bottom of the tree,
Yeah.
and I'm shooting straight down because that's the shot that I've been snubbed on the last several years.
Oh, okay.
And of course this year, I didn't have either one of those. Both my doe and my buck weren't in that situation. But it's just like a confidence thing, you know. It's
Yep.
practice, it's repetition. So,
Yep.
Talking on the trail camera stuff. So, what have you? That crazy 12? Are you still getting pictures of him, or is he off breeding somewhere?
Well, he got hit by a local guy. Actually, got hit with an arrow.
Yeah.
We don't know whether he's alive or not, and I haven't really been targeting that area a lot lately, so
Mhm.
I can't say whether I know for sure if he's alive or dead, but he could be dead.
Yeah.
I guess that's unfortunate, but it's hunting. I've hit deer. We've all made a bad shot or two, so
Mm-hmm.
I hold nothing against the guy. But there's plenty other fish in the sea, and that's kind of what we're focusing on right now.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't get too crazy on the trail cameras this time of year. I'm just focusing on probably the number one thing on a buck's mind, and it's those bigger doe groups, especially in the big woods where, you know, you don't really have like does everywhere. You'll have areas like there's dead areas too. So just focusing on the bigger pockets of does and just kind of just waiting on them for Mr. Big to show.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like I said before, most of our clients will probably be happy to take a 100-incher and they won't even pass it up. So those bucks have been showing up and those guys have been shooting them. So
Yeah.
as long as they're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's nice when we get, you know, maybe a 130 or 140. But so far we've only got one real big one. But
Yeah.
I'm all good with it.
Yeah. It's I think the camera thing, we got heavy into it this summer,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, you're running a lot of cameras.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you almost get like camera obsessed too, and then everything changes,
Yep.
and then your deer are not like, we had a lot of cameras. Most of our cameras are set up on field edges or scrapes,
Yep.
and all of a sudden like that stuff just died off. And it's
Sure.
with all the cell cams, it's never been more apparent that their patterns change. Like,
Oh,
we're seeing it
God,
like
yeah.
live action, not
Yep.
pulling a card every 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, you're seeing it every day.
And you can make the adjustment fast.
You can make the adjustment and you can get super frustrated because it's been really interesting. Like, our farm, it has just been like absolutely dead. Brian and Dallas had a whole week off
Mm-hmm.
and like had all the expectations in the world the last week of October, and it was a dud, like
Wow.
complete dud.
Wow.
And finally, so that our target buck, he was super regular all summer, September into beginning of October, and then he just vanished. And we actually had 2 physical sightings of him the first 2 Sundays of season,
Wow.
and then he just, God only knows where he went. and if he just hunkered down or if does were coming to him. We're not really sure.
Yeah.
But the neighbors weren't seeing him. We weren't seeing him. And then this morning he just showed back up.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
So, and yes, I'm hoping Brian and Dallas are both hunting today. So, and there appears to be a hot doe in the area because we were seeing a bunch of activity on the camera. So I'm hoping that they get into some action today.
Just to see him would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And then like up at camp, we've got this buck Frankenbeans that we're after.
Mm-hmm.
Third year we've been after him, and he's been different this year too, where he's like, it seems like whether it's the weather or what's going on or if it was the way the moon was, the deer just are not exactly as daylight active as they were the last couple of years.
I totally agree.
That's kind of what you're seeing down here.
Yep, except the cameras I have been checking, the snow days that we had, I had tons of good buck activity, but I'm getting way more night pictures this year and less daylight than I ever have.
Yeah.
So I still think, and I mean, maybe the moon plays a little bit of a part in it, but when you have a lot of up and down weather too, at least I know these deer, like the weather, in my opinion, is the most important factor in deer activity. If it's warm, they're probably going to be more bogged down in the day and be more night active. So
yeah.
I think anyone that still sticks it out from this part of the country, maybe like starting tomorrow till towards the end of November, I really think this last stretch is going to be maybe the best we've seen this year.
Yeah,
so.
I hope so. And it looks like the weather's going to start turning.
Yep.
We're not far away, so we're in pretty much the same weather pattern.
Yep.
So looks like next weekend or this weekend, we kind of got some weather blowing through today, and it's going to cool down a little bit, at least, 20 degrees. Which is crazy. I mean, going from 75 down to 50,
which
that's where it should be.
That will make a big difference. Even though 50-something is not prime, but a 20-degree drop all of a sudden, those deer are going to be moving.
Yeah. So I would anticipate that this weekend, the end of this weekend would be a good weekend to be out there. But so you guys have your first Sunday ever, right?
Yeah, no,
this Sunday coming up.
There's never, ever been a bow hunter that I know in Pennsylvania that's got to hunt on Sunday, and we're pretty excited about it. It's given, like, some clients, nobody wants to have to sacrifice a ton of time off work, so had some guys that are going to do, like, a 3-day hunt. All they got to do is take off Friday, and then they can hunt Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they get a nice, quick 3-day hunt and only miss 1 day of work, so... it's going to get more kids out there this weekend, and I hope that in the future we have a lot more Sundays that they start to realize how much of a benefit it is to hunters.
Yeah. So, you guys have this Sunday, and then it's the first Sunday of rifle is your other Sunday you get this year, right?
Yep.
So,
I think it's going to be that's just a coffee pot in the background.
Oh, okay. It's brewing. I was like, what the hell? You got a tornado coming here? What's going on? Yeah, it's exciting to see that, and this is a perfect scenario for me. I was thinking hard about maybe trying to take a trip down this Sunday to hunt with my bow.
Yeah.
I bought my archery tag for down here. I obviously have my license, but I bought my archery stamp, whatever you call it.
Sure.
So I was thinking about it, but I'm like, it's really freaking pushing it. We got our opener rifle is next weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm really saving my brownie points for that. I'm gonna try to get after it the whole weekend. So.
Yep. No, I've been slightly tempted to try to squeeze in a couple New York bow hunts, but with guiding in that, I'm not even going to do it. But
are you planning on hunting New York rifle at all?
I'll be hunting opening day. Actually, because our bow season will end next Friday, but I'm not guiding after Wednesday, so it gives me a couple days to scout and prepare a little more for New York. And
nice.
I'll probably have about 4 or 5 days to hunt, so I'm really excited.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the beauty of where you are too, because you're.
Yep.
I mean, it's not a hike for you to get into that.
No, from this place where we're standing is only a couple miles from New York.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty nice.
Yep.
If you're feeling frisky, you just get on just walk it. Be there before you know it. Driving down here is pretty wild. I've never seen the reservoir drained.
Oh,
it's freaking nuts with everything down like that.
Yeah, I mean, they drain it some every year, but because it's been really dry this year, it's way below
lower than normal?
I don't know exactly how many feet, but it's definitely quite a bit lower than normal.
There's like when you get up closer to the New York line, there's no water.
Yeah.
It's like empty.
It's kind of scary.
It's very scary. And I see like 4-wheeler tracks with people out there ripping around. I'm like, you're freaking stupid. I would think there'd be like some soft spots
there probably is. Yeah.
Well, those individuals, that's called divine, or what do they call that? Whatever that theory is where the dumb ones get weeded out. It's like, yeah, go drive your 4-wheeler in the reservoir.
Good luck.
Let them sink, So I know I got some good questions here that I think will get us into some other stuff. So
Okay.
I'm going to hit the head real quick.
Yep.
And then if we want to dive into some of these questions, we'll kind of see what, you got a bunch of listener questions from Instagram. People message some stuff. So we'll dive into that in just a second.
Sounds good to me.
Good?
Hear me all right?
Hear you perfect. We're
All right.
back. Had to switch the batteries out, and I had to flush my system. So drank an awful lot of coffee this morning.
Same here.
So we were just chatting about bears too. So you guys haven't seen too much for bears down here this year.
No, I mean, but they're here. I don't think the population's down, but like I keep talking about the weather, I kind of think that the bear activity may be influenced a little bit. The pictures I'm getting of bears on the cameras are mainly at night. I mean, it's okay if someone shoots a bear, like I said, but I'm happy, just as happy if we don't kill any bears because it's a lot of work taking care of them.
Yeah, yeah, it's a nice novelty, but it's not something you want to make a routine out
No,
of.
God, no.
No, it's a lot of work. It's much easier to deal with the whitetail than it is a black bear.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so we wanted to dive into some questions. I know that's going to open up some other stuff for us to chat about. So I put a post up on Instagram and asked some folks for some questions they'd like to have answered by you and discussed. So we'll just jump right into the first one.
Sure.
First one is from Jason Hettenbaugh. He's a Honey Falls guy. So hey, Jason, thanks for your question. He says, on opening day, a rifle, what is the number one habitat or topo feature you want to set up on?
This is probably for Pennsylvania, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah,
Or
Pennsylvania.
for the
But I
most
know
part?
Jason, some of the areas he hunts in New York are
Okay.
kind of similar to us, general
Well,
area.
Well,
Let's say kind of big woods situation like you have down here.
right. Well, there's kind of a transition depending on whether it's New York or gun. Like, if it's New York, I'm still kind of in a rut area because I still see a fair amount of rutting activity until like close to Thanksgiving, then it seems to die off. So if it was New York, even when I hunt New York next weekend, I'm just gonna stick to my probably doe bedding areas. That's probably what I'll focus on. Not really too concerned about terrain, but does don't always bed in the thickest cover. I'm just going to try to scout for a couple days and see where the does are bedding, locate some food sources, and then maybe look for some little higher elevation points near there. Just try to see if I can find something consistent with the does. That's kind of all my focus is on for New York. But then in gun season in Pennsylvania, I'll be focused more on maybe around where I think some buck bedding is, clear cuts, especially the cover on higher elevations, because it seems like right about that time every year a lot of our bucks start to get like a little worn down from the rut. They're in more of a rest mode. They're in cover more throughout the day than not. So there's kind of like a transition then. But like I said, it just depends on what state you're talking about. You got to know what the deer, you got to know those changes when they're going to happen throughout the year.
Yeah, and I wonder this year with just the way that the dates are falling and the way that we've seen rutting activity at the end of October this year, where it looked like some lockdown and some actual breeding was happening at the end of October.
Yeah.
So taking that time range and putting it out a month, for those does that maybe didn't get bred to come back in that time frame with you guys. I know the last couple of years we've been down here hunting, we've seen pretty decent rutting activity, and that's where I think we've had a lot of our success was because there were hot does in the area.
Oh yeah, it can happen.
So kind of taking that into consideration, it goes back to what you said to me a week and a half ago: is pay attention to your does and what's going on.
Yep.
And if you find a batch of bucks in one area, there's probably a hot doe in the area, so pay attention to that.
Yeah, sometimes what I'll see here, especially later, is I might find like a small doe group, maybe 4 or 5 does, but then there'll be like 3 bucks hanging with them. And I think that's just a sign that they sense she's either coming into heat or she is in heat, and they'll stay with those does until she's done. So something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, pay attention to your does.
Yep.
I think it's a great tip. And there's another question here that I'll get onto in a second, which I think kind of works into this. But on the opening day is a kind of a unique way of looking at it. It's not really looking at the whole rifle season. You and I both know, and anybody who is hunted on an opening day knows that there's more pressure on that day than any other day that you will have in the woods.
Yep.
So are you? I know what you're talking about, looking at doe bedding or buck bedding, kind of trying to get yourself situated there. But are you also thinking at all about what other people are doing, pressure, where the deer might be going to try to evade that pressure? Is that something that you're thinking about?
What I try to do is I try to think of where most people are going to come into an area from, and then I'll do the complete opposite. I don't care what the walk's like, what the terrain's like, but I figure if it's just me on one end and 20 guys on the other, I'm going to have a little bit of an advantage that way.
Yeah.
Seems like everybody picks the biggest parking spot, the flattest walk, and that's how they'll approach an area. So I think if you're a little bit different, that pressure can help you if you play it right. But the thing about us anymore is everyone that hunts is sitting, so you might have a little bit of morning push, and then throughout the day, I mean, everyone's just sitting, and the deer kind of get bumped somewhere, and then they get comfortable and hang out, and then so the pressure part, I don't know if it's not like it used to be where you could just sit all day and people were bumping deer to you nonstop. I don't really see that much anymore.
Agreed. I mean, we see the same thing up in New York. It's just the style of hunting has changed so much.
Yep.
But it's, with that comes that later morning when guys are getting up and either moving spots or they're going back to camp to have something to eat or back to the truck. Those are some of your best opportunities is late morning.
Yep, I agree.
So that kind of rolls me into the next question from Hunter Stutz 34. Thanks for the question. He had two questions. The first one kind of goes along with that. How early do you get on the stand in the big woods? I guess this answer it both from archery perspective, like this time of year, and once you get into gun. Are you trying to be out there super early, or are you one of those guys that goes in maybe after the sun comes up to take a lay of the land?
I mean, for me, I don't care to get in way early. In fact, sometimes I'd rather hunt my way in if I was gun hunting, because this might just be a theory, but I always have a theory of, like, if I have to use a flashlight, I feel like deer are seeing that from everywhere, and maybe 90% it doesn't even bother them, but deer know that, okay, that's not right. But if I'm going through in the daylight, as long as I'm quiet and I play the wind right, that they don't know that I'm there. Now, if it's like opening day of gun, I'm not going to take any chances because I know there's a lot of other hunters in the woods, and I want to make sure I claim my spot.
Yeah.
But other than that, throughout the year, especially more gun season, I rarely get in the woods well before daylight, and usually I'll hunt my way in. Archery depends on the time of the year. Like if I had a stand way back in or something like that, and I was just hunting for myself, I mean, I want to get there right at daylight. It just all boils down to the scenario and the time of year. But I think my point is I don't believe in all situations you need to be in the woods like an hour before daylight. Some people think that they want to get in way ahead of time because it lets their scent kind of disperse, but I think it might have a greater effect if you're in your stand longer, because when you're in your stand, your scent's still blowing everywhere. So the longer you're sitting there, the more scent's getting scattered all around your area.
Right.
So I don't really think that really plays a part into that. You don't have to get in there an hour before daylight.
Yeah. It's all situational, and that's the hard thing. I mean, you try to ask people, like, give me what's the right answer. It's like there is no right answer.
Yeah,
because if you're hunting a specific buck in a specific bed at a certain time of year, and you know you have to be in there an hour before he gets to that's the situation.
Yeah, exactly.
But it also comes back to the type of stand you're hunting. I mean, if you're doing a mobile setup where you're kind of running and gunning, that's a factor too. I'm after what I experienced with my shooting my buck there on the 30th. That I knew I was going to be going in because I was going to help my wife get off to work with the kids, and I had the day off. I was going to go hunt. So I had an hour and a half drive, get to the spot. So I knew I was going to be going in the daylight.
Yeah.
But the only reason why I'm very confident in this, the only reason why I was able to make that hunt come together was because I went in during the daylight.
Sure.
And I snuck into the area where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I assessed it. I ended up getting into a little bit of rut activity, and I set up there.
There you go.
Whereas if I went in the dark, I never would have seen what I had seen.
Yep.
And who knows how the day would have unfolded
Yep.
if I didn't come in the daylight.
Yeah, if not to interrupt you, but I think if you're one of them like mobile hunter, like aggressive guys, I think you're way better off going in the daylight. Yeah, you might be able to, scout, on the satellite map or whatever, but if you can kind of go in and quickly see some things with your own eyes, I think you might be better off hunting that way.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
And I mean, when you put a gun in your hand, the second, I mean, it's the same way with a bow, but when you can extend that range to 100 yards plus,
Yep.
If the sun's up, you're hunting.
Exactly.
Like you literally step out of the truck and
Yep.
you get into the woods, you're hunting.
That's what I mean about gun season. I'm totally okay with hunting my way in and just nothing's knowing. I play the wind right. I be quiet. I just sneak in, and if something comes by me before I get to the stand, I'll gladly take that opportunity.
100%. Why go through all that effort of climbing up when you could just shoot
Yep.
when you're on the ground?
Yep.
For sure. All right, so I think that's a good answer to his first question there.
Okay.
It's variable, it's situational, but you heard it here first. Don't rush in there unless you absolutely have to.
Yep.
He had another question. What tips do you have for late PA archery / muzzleloader season in December and January in the big woods?
I think if you can, because big woods, like, food's scarce that time of year, but if you can find food and it's, if it's in a place where a buck feels safe and secure, you might be able to kill him over food. If not, it will be a good locating point of, okay, at least I know there's a good buck in the area, because if you find food late in the year, good chance you're going to find a good buck or maybe several, because like I said, there's just not a lot of food out there then. So find a food source and then see whether or not they're using it in the daytime, and then if they're not, try to bump closer to where you think those deer might be bedding. And other than that, I mean, there's not a whole lot of rutting activity then. They're not throwing down tons of sign, so it's pretty simple. It's not easy, but it's a simple strategy.
Yeah. Have you ever seen bucks hanging with a large group of does during that time?
Oh, I've actually seen some rutting then. What I have seen is most of the rutting I've seen that late has been on like yearling does.
Yeah.
But it's still not something you can like really key in on.
No.
It's just kind of it happens. But those bucks, even though they're still in a little bit of a rutting mood, and even as well as when gun season starts, their bodies are telling them, okay, we got winter coming. It's time to start getting ready for winter too. Like that's just how Mother Nature works. Even though their hormones are still pumping, they got to start building up those preserves. So the rutting activity always dies down. You might find a buck like he may not be cruising, but he might be laying somewhere where he can kind of just observe does.
Yeah.
And if a hot one comes in the area, he'll get up. If not, he's just going to watch him go by.
Yeah.
Rather, this time of year, group of does goes by a buck, he's probably going to go right up there and check him out.
Yeah.
So.
And I've heard this, and I think it's a valid statement that a lot of times, maybe if it's a more higher pressure area, you might find a buck that's not, to your point, not bedding right with the does, but bedding near them.
Yep.
Because those does can be his best safety blanket.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're super aware of what's going on everywhere.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So I've actually, a couple times when we had good snow during gun season, I never saw the buck, but I was on the does and stalking in on them on a big side hill coming down on. We had like 1.5 feet of snow.
Yeah.
And I was watching these does, and I got within 100 yards of them, and it was just too much brush, too much like beach brush, and I couldn't get a clear shot. I ended up not getting a shot, but they ended up seeing me, and there had to be 8 or 10 does in this group. They all busted off and ran in one direction. And when I got down to the level that they were on, there was a single bed by itself that was a big bed, and it had a good track in it. And that buck was just bedded off of where they were.
Yeah.
And so I noted that, I marked that on my map. I knew where they were, and he was on a little like flat bench spot. It wasn't big. It was maybe 10 yards wide.
Yeah.
This little bench on the hill before it dropped down again.
Yep.
So it was just like a mental note. Okay, he was here, and then watching him where he went after that happened.
Yep.
So that's something I think a good tip for people, especially if you have snow on the ground, paying attention to where those does are, what they're doing, but then also maybe thinking about, where could a buck be in this situation?
Absolutely.
To observe what's happening around him.
Yeah, no, he was probably observing the does. Plus, it sounds like he had just a good bedding vantage point, anyways.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. All right. Let's see. We got Luke Pierce. I guess we'll just talk. This is kind of towards the end of archery, so we'll just kind of talk rifle wise.
Mm-hmm.
Are you focusing on hunting ridges, bottoms, or other?
I mean, I'm almost always up high unless the pressure's up high. If you have, say, like if the easiest access, there might be, some drivable roads up top, and that might get deer to hang a little bit more lower. But other than that, I'm still up high around cover, around bedding. I totally more for in gun season hunting around bedding than food sources. Maybe like the last hour or two, throughout the day, you can maybe check out an Oak Ridge or an Oak Point. You might catch a buck feeding there, but midday and that, those deer are mainly focusing around those higher elevation cover areas.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's an up-down travel, or like are they coming down in the evening and up in the day?
Exactly.
Or up in the morning to bed?
Yep.
Do you correlate any of that because I see some of that back home in the Finger Lakes where our camp is and where I spend a lot of time hunting,
Mm-hmm.
that there's really no good water source up high.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Okay.
Like, if I can talk about that, everyone thinks that the reason for it is thermals, because in the morning thermals are rising and in the afternoon thermals are dropping. I think it's more water, at least in the mountains, because there's very little water up high, but the deer feel safer up high. So at night, when they know that human pressure is, they've sensed that. We all know that deer move more at night, so that's why they come down in the valleys to drink, and that's why you'll find in these creek bottoms, you may find more buck sign in creek bottoms than anywhere, because that's where deer are congregated at night.
Mm-hmm.
Like the water source is a major area. It's just like a lone oak ridge full of acorns. All the deer are going to come in there. So you'll see a lot of sign around water in the creek bottoms, because every night that those deer got to go down there and get a drink. And they'll hang down there all night too, because they're, unlike us, I'll drink bottled water every hour, but deer, they do most of their drinking around here at night. So they'll stay down there and get filled up with water, and then when it gets just about daytime, they'll start working up the ridges again.
Yeah, and if you think about their security-wise, I think the water is a big piece, the food's a big piece, and the thermals are a big piece too, because if they're down in the bottoms, in the evening, you have thermals pulling down. If you're on a creek, you got the thermals, coming down with the creek.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have this like hub of everything.
Yeah.
And I know like that's something Bo talks a lot about. Bo Martonic talks a lot
Mm-hmm.
about like those thermal hubs where he gets down. He likes to hunt the bottoms, and he gets down in there where a lot of the scents mixing up.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of factor to that, and
yeah.
I've seen that in our area, and it sounds like a lot of the same. And even our experience hunting down here too, is that we catch a lot. We have good success in the mornings when we do our big organized still hunts.
Mm-hmm.
We catch a lot of bucks down in the open, in the low areas in the morning.
Yeah.
Just kind of naturally moving.
Yep.
And we shoot them early when they're kind of out in the open.
Yep.
But later, when we do our afternoon hunts, we're typically getting those bucks up towards the top.
Perfectly right.
We have our sitters up towards the top, and we're working those bottoms up towards the top of the ridges.
Yep.
So it's interesting. I've had a couple times hunting some public land down near us where I've just been like 10 minutes late, where I've missed the deer coming up from the bottom, heading up the hill to bed for the day.
Yep.
I've just been too late, so
Sure.
that a lot of times I think if you're somebody who's listening to this, that you're trying to figure out like how do you target that stuff is, hunt lower, get, maybe a third up a hill in the morning for that first hour to try to catch those deer transitioning from low to high.
Exactly.
And then maybe, especially if it's gun season, then just do some still hunting and try to get up above and work the wind and play it that way.
Yep. And also this year, I have noticed a lot of like mid-hill bedding, and more than normal, but I think because it's been such a dry year, I think the deer are trying to cut off some of that distance to water, especially the does. Like there's a lot of does bedding way lower than normal this year, and I think it's just because of water, because maybe the does are a little more comfortable than being in the open woods in the bottoms in the daylight, so they might even be going down for water some during the day too, so something to keep in mind.
Is any of that reflected in any of your I guess one where you're putting hunters right now, and number two where you're seeing some of the rutting activity?
Yeah, what hurt me a little bit is I had a lot of like stands put up way early, up higher, and they didn't produce because I couldn't figure it out for a while because the food was up there, the cover was up there. Like I know places where there's just acorns like marbles, there's thick bedding areas around, and they're not getting used at all. And I think what it is what I determined is there's just no water anywhere near there this year. So the bedding seems to be a little bit lower. I don't know about for a lot of your mature bucks, but the does are a lot lower than normal.
Agreed. It's definitely interesting to. It's like so live action. Like you're talking about the stuff that's going on right now.
Right now.
And it's year to year. Like there's general normalities that you see year after year, but there is little tweaks and changes.
Yep.
So Danny Zahler, never heard of him, but he sounds like a nice fella. He says, as we shift into late November, what changes are you making to stay on big deer? So as we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but as the season transitions from, you got rutting activity and you're focusing on does, how are you transitioning your focus to hunting those bigger deer later in the season?
I think the biggest key is to be in the woods as much as possible to notice when things do change. Because like I said, you'll be out there here in these next still another week or two, and you'll see good rutting activity, and then you might base your late November, your gun hunting like on what you saw then. And the problem is it can all change just like a light switch. All of a sudden the rutting activity dies right off. Those bucks aren't showing up in those doe feeding and bedding areas in the daytime. So my key point to him would be to be paying attention to the changes in the shifts as much as possible. Usually I think it's here around Thanksgiving I'll start to see that rutting activity start to die off. And once you notice that, then like I said, start focusing more around your buck bedding areas later in the year. Your best chance to probably kill a buck that time of year is going to be the first couple hours in the morning and last couple hours of daylight. Mm-hmm. So I'm if you're a guy that wants to sit there all day, that's fine. But then again, if you're someone that just likes to put a couple hours in the morning, then the afternoon, that guy's going to have just as good of a chance as anyone then.
Yeah. Now, what was I going to say? So you mentioned earlier, like, areas where you just feel are like dead zones, where there's just nothing going on.
Yeah.
That can change throughout the season where you have a dead zone that is a dead zone, and then next thing you know, a day later or a week later, all of a sudden that's where they are. How are you kind of like weeding that stuff out throughout the season?
I think a lot of it, too, is my cameras. Like, ran like 100-some cameras. There's still 100-some cameras out there right now. But I have cameras in areas way in advance where I'm predicting activity to be like maybe this might be a mid-November or late November area. The camera might even be there since September. It's not so much that I was expecting anything in September, but it's a lot of work to get all those cameras out. So get them all out as fast or as soon as you can and be prepared. And then I'll start watching, all of a sudden, oh wow, this area turns on. So my cameras are probably my number one key to pay attention to when things change. Mm-hmm. And then even just just paying attention to like certain sign, certain food sources will start to dry up and then deer will shift to a different kind of food source later in the year. So you might have early fall food that dries up. You might have a later in the season food source, and the same with bedding too. Earlier in the year, the bedding is more scattered because there's a lot of leaf cover. Mm-hmm. When all the leaves drop, then there's less good bedding cover. So then it's actually a little bit easier to find bedding then. So just knowing when these changes take place, that's what you got to pay attention to.
Yep. Yeah, if you're not seeing it, don't waste your time.
Yep.
I think that's something that you learn with time too.
For sure.
Don't sit there staring at the ground thinking that, well, they were here 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. They got to come back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can't forget. It's like an elk hunting thing. Like you got to hunt elk where they are, not where they were or where they should be.
That's the same with any animal.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was busting chops. Dan Zahler is actually our chief financial officer. He's the CFO. Yeah, Danny Boy is one of the OG Pertnear guys. So next question's from Nick Scott. He's a our neighbor up there.
Okay.
He's got a Instagram page and a YouTube channel, Engraved Outdoors. So Nick's doing a good job with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "What's your favorite location for a stand for catching a cruising buck?" So if you're, I guess, let's say like now through the end of November, where are you? Nick's hunting mainly farmland, but let's talk like big woods scenario. Like where are you trying to be situated?
My favorite area of all would be a doe bedding area.
Yeah.
Especially if it's got some cover aspect to it, because I also have seen like particular mature deer. You'll get them. There might be a doe feeding area, and you still only get those deer on camera in dark. Even like some of these older deer, they will not go down to a place they don't feel safe, even in the rut.
Yeah.
But if there's a good doe bedding area with a little bit of cover, that's where he'll probably be willing to go in the daytime.
Yeah.
So and I'll just sit on it. Even if I'm just say I've hunted it, 2 days, I'll still give it another third day, even if I haven't seen a good buck.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of waiting on it, because I know that the bucks know even better than me what the does are doing in particular areas.
Yep.
So if I know what the does are doing and I'm seeing the does, bedding in a certain area, then I'll just wait there. Sooner or later, I think he'll show up.
So 2 things on that. That's why I wanted to get you on before the rut happened, because of your 3-day strategy. So quickly just run through that. You've talked about it a bunch. You were just on Truth from the Stand. You talked about that with Clint.
Yep.
Like just chat quick on what your 3-day strategy is.
Yeah, I have a morning stand where try to sit till noon, and then try to get into a whole new area or different. Obviously another stand by 1 o'clock, and sit there till dark. Sometimes you're not going to be able to play it exactly as the way I'm saying it, depending on how far or whatever. But my theory is usually a good area, especially in the big woods, they kind of turn on and off. And in a 3-day period, it's usually good for at least 1 day. I had some guys, I try to do the 3-day strategy with all my clients, and they had, the past 2 days, except for today, it's been, super warm. Well, think they've seen 1 deer out of all their stands.
Yikes.
And I'm trying to keep banking that 3-day strategy on them, but they gave up on it.
Yeah,
and I can understand that. But if it were me, I'd just stick it out, because especially if it's not good hunting weather, and I think the deer are mainly moving at night, I don't care what I've seen. If I've sat in any of those stands for 2 days and I haven't seen a deer, I still give it that 3rd day.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, I've noticed in a 3-day period, like big woods deer don't always have like a daily pattern, but they make their rounds in certain areas. So, I'll just kind of wait them out till they come. Also, the reason why I might have 2 different stands, because usually one stand will be hot kind of throughout the day. So especially, I don't want to throw all my cards onto one stand. If I have 2 stands, I feel like my options or my odds are a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
So just, through years of doing that, I've had more success when I started using that strategy. And actually this year, we've had more success this year. Maybe we haven't killed a lot of really good deer, but like I said, I don't have any size limits. But the people that have bought into the strategy are having more success this year than we have ever had. And most of the bucks we've killed this year have been on the 3rd day in that stand.
No shit.
So which is really challenging when it hasn't been all that great the first day or 2, to keep their minds fresh, and especially if it's a new client and he has no confidence in me, to try to like keep him going.
Yeah.
But the 3rd day has been the best day for me this year. I did the 3-day strategy, and I killed my buck on the 2nd day, but in my afternoon stand, the first day I only saw 1 3-point, and then the 2nd day, it turned on. So that's kind of how that goes.
Yeah, it's a matter of just time and being there. And so the second part of that question was, we've come back around. Clearly, doe bedding is one of the biggest things you focus on
in the rut,
especially this time of year.
Yes.
How are you playing your setup on that? Based on, are you paying attention to the wind or thermals? What are you thinking about when you set up on? Because doe bedding could be, I'm thinking of my situation with the scenario where I was when I shot my buck.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be on the downwind side of that corridor that I knew there was good doe bedding.
Right.
And with me down here, it's hard because you've got a lot of these like spinning, twisting, turning.
Yep.
In the Finger Lakes, you got along these long straight ridges that run north and south. So
yeah.
you don't get super consistent wind, but you get fair. If you can get a wind out of the north or the south,
yep.
you've got some fairly consistent winds.
Yep.
So I was waiting for a north wind. I got it on the right day, the right time. Everything came together.
Sure.
For you, like, how are you figuring that out down here?
It's a lot more challenging, and like this year, like I mentioned before, a lot of the doe bedding's a little lower than normal. The lower you get in these areas in these mountains, the more unpredictable the wind is and the more inconsistent. So this year I'm really in a lot of areas not going by wind at all because I just can't. In fact, I've had so many guys say this year, because we have like a lot of like ribbon trails to our stands, they say they watch the ribbon 1 minute this way, that way. So the wind has hurt us some. But, we're just kind of praying that when a deer comes by that it will work out.
Yeah.
And then it would be really hard to do the 3-day strategy if it was entirely based on wind, because rarely do you get the same wind 3 days in a row.
Right.
So,
or even throughout the day.
Yeah. But honestly, in the big woods, if you'll see that deer show up from a lot of different directions. It's not like, hey, they come from this wood lot into the field every night. Like, you'd be surprised how many times a guy will say, I had deer coming from all different directions.
Yeah.
Just big woods is a little different. So where I think the wind, it is a huge factor, but then again, you just kind of got to roll with it, a lot in the big woods. So that's kind of what we're, dealing with this year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that's very interesting to me.
Yep.
So, good answer, sir. It's almost like you're a professional. All right, the last official question we had was from Jim DiAgostino. He's a Pertnear guy. So Jim's he's actually from PA over near the Philadelphia area.
Oh, cool.
So we met him last year 2 years ago at the Total Archery Challenge, and we've stayed in touch with him.
Mm-hmm.
Good dude, and he got certified to be an official bow technician.
Nice.
So he anybody that lives over that way, he's got an Instagram channel, Keystone Precision Archery. And he does, bow tech work. He'll tune bows and build arrows and things like that. So
cool.
Check Jimbo out. Anybody that's listening to this. So his question is kind of getting into elevation, some of the stuff we've talked about. But do you feel elevation is a factor to deer travel and bedding? Example would be hunting high points early and low later in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we talked a little bit about elevation, about what you're seeing this year based on moisture and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you see that change throughout the season based on foliage and food availability, water, things like that?
Like elevation, most years, like I said, the bedding is at least 90% of deer, I notice, are bedding at least halfway up the hill, if not towards the way top. Mm-hmm. So most years you got to bank on that. Like I said, this year, this is a very weird year. I mean, not only has 2020 been weird for us as U.S. citizens, but right. It's been a weird year in the deer woods too. So, and one of the main things has been the drought conditions. So it just seems like, you just have to, you can never have like a one-minded strategy, or you kind of got to always keep your options open as a deer hunter and just let the deer tell you what they're doing. But most years you can bank on those deer bedding, pretty high up, throughout the year. And then, but getting into winter, it does change a lot because the air is colder, the winds are more brutal up high. You'll start to see that, that lower bedding. Usually the snow is deeper up high, so that forces deer lower. But for, most of the hunting season, I would still recommend at least starting out up high, looking for bedding that way. And then if it's not a crazy year like this year, then, you'll probably be pretty good to go up there.
Yeah. I like it. It makes good sense, and it's so much variability.
Yep.
So that was the end of our official questions from our listeners.
Okay.
Do you is there anything else, that we covered stuff really thoroughly?
Yeah,
I
I
think,
feel pretty good about it.
As far as strategy for the rest of the season, is there anything else you can think about that, as far as maybe just tips for people or things to be thinking about as you're heading out for gun season?
Sure. Yeah, like I said, and I touched on it a little bit before, but, just so I can really get it glued into everyone's minds, the rut, yeah, it's one of the best times of year to be in the woods, and right now we got that going on. But it's extremely important, going into gun season, that you're not basing what you're seeing now entirely on what your strategy is going to be for gun season, because things will change. Deer have several changes throughout the seasons, and there's going to be a change, going into gun season. I'm not saying the rut will drop off completely, but it's very important to base your hunts more on what you think is going to happen rather than what you're seeing now. Everyone was super happy when Pennsylvania, opened up the gun season on a Saturday, and I do think it's a great idea, but for me, it's been a little more challenging because I used to be able to hunt in New York till like about Thanksgiving, and then Thanksgiving, I'd be spending time with my family. But now I really only have like one day to scout and see what's going on out there, because Saturday all of a sudden is opening day, when before I had Friday, Saturday, Sunday to try to
Thanksgiving.
to try to get a feel on, okay, are things changing, or should I be in rut mode? Should I be, more in that post-rut strategy? So the biggest key going into especially Pennsylvania gun season is figuring out, okay, do we have more of a rut scenario going on out there, or should I be more post-rut? Truly pay attention to that, because if you're hunting doe bedding or your rut stands because, man, they were just super hot all through November, I promise you those spots will not stay hot the whole time. So just be ready for that shift. I think that's going to really help people out a lot if you pay attention.
Yeah. How about safety-wise? It's going to,
yeah.
Rifle season is something, especially there's a lot of new hunters. I don't know what PA, I don't know if you've heard numbers from PA, but I know New York was extreme how many new hunters we have.
Yep. I think you're going to, this whole year, it's, people, you haven't been able to play organized sports as much, so everyone's trying to find new things to do, and I think hunting is a great thing, and I think a lot of people have bought into it. So I do expect you're going to see more hunters, especially in gun season. Gun hunting is a little bit easier to pick up on than archery, so there's probably some people who are saying, well, I'm going to at least try gun hunting. So expect there's going to be more hunters. Don't care about, I don't want to wear blaze orange because deer are going to see me. I've worn orange here in Pennsylvania my whole life. I'm telling you, the number one thing you got to worry about with deer is your movement. Don't move. Other than that, put the stinking orange on, because, your life is more important than a deer any day. Yeah, so definitely, wear your orange. I wear it in New York where we hunt in Allegheny State Park, and you don't even have to wear it, but I wear it because there's a ton of people out there, and as much as I love deer hunting, I would rather see tomorrow than kill a big buck any day.
100%.
So, yeah, always safety harnesses, all that. It's never worth skimping on any of those things when it comes to safety.
No. And see what you're shooting at.
Exactly. Yep.
We hear it time and time again. There was some stuff that happened during turkey season in New York where you had some people getting shot that was just stupidity. I've heard some stories recently, not necessarily in New York, but other areas where people are just shooting at movement.
Yep.
So if you're a new hunter, even if you're a long time hunter, just remember that. In PA, one of the good things about having the APR, the antler restriction, is it makes you slow down.
Yeah.
You can't just be shooting at brown running through the woods.
Yep.
So, that's a good thing, but in New York, we don't have that. So
be extra
simmer
careful.
down, chill out, make sure. And it's not even necessarily what you're shooting at. Know what's on the other side of what you're shooting at.
Absolutely.
If you got a deer that's skyline, don't take that shot.
Not worth it.
Especially if you got a rifle, because that bullet can go a long ways.
Yep.
God only knows where it's going to end.
Yep.
So make sure you got a good backdrop. Make sure you're, if you're in a tree stand, that's good. You're shooting down into the ground.
Yep.
Just stuff to take into consideration that you're not thinking about when you're archery hunting, because you don't have that. You could shoot somebody with your bow, I guess, but that's got to be a pretty wild
really
situation.
Crazy.
Yeah. But gun, my first gun season, at my first day ever, I was out of slugs by 5 minutes after legal shooting light. I was that excited. So I know what the excitement is. And granted, I was at 16 years old.
Yep.
So like you're a young man, you're full of piss and vinegar, and I was just laying down rounds.
Yep.
Didn't hit anything. But that's the excitement you have that first time in the woods.
Yep.
So just be aware that when that feeling overcomes you, just slow down.
Yep. And I don't want to talk like I'm some wimpy anti-hunter, because I'm as far as you can be from that as possible.
Easy, Steve.
But like, I'm getting more picky on the shots I take too. Like, you know, I'm super anxious to maybe get a nice buck. You know, whether it's Pennsylvania gun, and I know opportunities are few and far between, and you want to make the best of every one. But you know, it's not worth taking a bad shot on any deer. Even I don't even care if you know, thing's 20 yards and running by you. If you don't think you can make that shot, don't take it, because I can't imagine what it's like, you know, to get shot and be wounded, and those deer are feeling the pain just as much as us. And like I said, if there's anyone that's for hunting, it's me. But just consider the animal, and that it's a real life.
Lethal, ethical shot.
Yeah, just take good shots. You know, don't get overly excited. When you know your opportunity is presented, that's the time to take a deep breath and read the situation and find that, you know, that little window of, okay, that looks like this is going to be my best chance. Check your surroundings. Try your best to make a good shot, and hopefully it all comes together for you.
Yep.
So
that is just good stuff. Listen to us, just a couple old men sitting here telling people how to be safe. So that's good stuff. I look forward to staying in touch with you, and best of luck to you in New York. You know, you don't have your buck tag down here anymore, but now you can focus on your clients and helping everybody else out in the family. And
thanks.
I would like to get back together with you after season.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about shed hunting. I know you do a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I started getting into more of that last year, and I think that the strategy behind it's pretty fascinating.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to catch up with you after season and talk a bit about that. And you know, thank you for the support and for, you know, being so engaged with us and, you know, answering our questions. And
my pleasure.
It's really fun, the community that you build around the outdoors and the lifestyle we all live. You know, it's
very fortunate.
Little things like you saying what you said to me before I went after, you know, go focus on the does, or you know, just little stuff like that. It sometimes when you need somebody to give you a clear direction on something to focus on, that's the beauty of the community. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I appreciate it, Steve. Best of luck to you the rest of the season, and
same to you, bud, and good luck to everyone else that listens. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve.
All right.